Okay, well, welcome to Tim and Jennifer Go to Israel. We started off, of course, flying to England, and we were only there for one night. It was really, really quick, but we got some fish and chips right away, and a pint at a place called The Plough. Really nice little pub. Second day, we ended up traveling, and this is where we went to meet up with our team. We got to Tel Aviv and stayed at the Old Jaffa Hostel. It was this really quaint place, and we stayed at a room just up off the street, and the street was just live with people and eating and laughing. It was really, really cool. Got there quite late. Next morning we woke up and had breakfast on the rooftop terrace overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, and we walked down to the Mediterranean after breakfast. Yep, this is what Jonah would have seen when he wanted to run away from God. After that, Sunday morning we had connected with our team and already traveled out into the countryside, came to these standing stones, I think he said set up by Solomon. So been there for some time, representing things that God had done for them. This was the St. George's Monastery that we got to see down in this valley. We were way up on the other side. Maybe a few monks still live there. We stayed at a hotel right on the Dead Sea, quite beautiful. We used this as our base of operations, going back and forth from there. Across the street was some restaurant. I don't know what it was. Couldn't make out the words, but probably was good. And then Jennifer floated in the Dead Sea. So this is pretty cool. You just lift your feet up and whoop, you're right up on top of the water. Day 3, we started right off into the desert, and it was hot and dry. You think, man, how can anybody live out here? And the people graze sheep out here. And this is what they would call green pastures, enough to feed sheep for a little while, just enough for today. Definitely not a ton of green pastures. And look at these, the blues and the brown was just really, really cool. Went to this place called the Temple of Arad, and what was unique about this was they had this old Jewish tabernacle, or temple that was set up. And we got to go and wander around that, and you can see the different parts of it, to see how a temple might have been set up. So here we're going to walk through it. Just on to the right there would be an altar that they would have used to sacrifice the animals. Here is the outer court where Jews could enter. Anybody could go into this area, any Jew could go into this area. But only the priests could go on beyond that area. So they went into the inner court. And this is the inner court. Super tiny. I expected it to be much larger. And then only the high priest could go into the most holy place, and he only went in there once a year. And I just found this remarkable standing there and knowing that this was a very holy place that nobody ever went into. We went and visited this Bedouin woman who made this wonderful bread for us. She fried it on this little oven that she has in the middle of her house. And that they stock with sticks to keep it going. So she made this bread for us and then served us, and we had that with olive oil and hyssop. We just dipped the bread into the hyssop and the oil in the hyssop, and it was so good. Super, super hot in this room. I think Jennifer took this video. I didn't bother going inside, but here she is throwing it up on top of that oven and heating it up there, and just waits for a little while. She starts making another one, and then we'll flip that one. It's really good. She was one of several wives to some guy. So somehow she knows the exact time to flip it. With everybody's work at Boston Pizza, you'd think we'd be pretty good at this too. Flips it over, nice and brown. Her daughter comes in with some sticks. I crank open the oven door, and the daughter tosses some sticks in there to stoke the fire. After that, we went for a hike down this wadi, and in rainy season, the water would come pouring down there. But in dry season, of course, it was totally safe, and rock formations were just incredible. Really hot. We ended up hunkering under a tree. The whole team had a little talk under this tree. It was nice and cool. So day 4, we went for this another hike in this gorge in the wilderness of Zin, and you can see it drops off a long way down. Drop off on one side, cliff face on the other, and across the gorge was this other cliff face. Very, very cool. Climbed up this set of stairs, which is almost straight up, and it was a good hike up there that day. Got to the top and had a nice view behind us of where we came. That's Tim and Jennifer. And then we went to Masada, and if you look at this rock here ahead of us, I mean, you wouldn't look at that and think, hey, I can support 10,000 people for 10 years on the top of that hill. That's exactly what Herod did. He built these storerooms where they stored tons of grain and other things to keep people, so people could live up there, and they hid there from the Jews. Ended up taking this over and hiding from the Romans. Here's Herod's palace or room, and that was his favorite wife's room there. And then they would collect water down these grooves, and they would flow into cisterns, and they would bring them up. For the people, you see the interior, some of the walls are still intact. They had these ceremonial bath places so people could go down and get cleansed before they sinned, or after they sinned, or before and after they sinned, or whatever. This is the view from the top, just extraordinary. You see the Dead Sea out there. You see for a long, long way. And this is, the Masada is like, the top of there is about the high as the Eiffel Tower. And so there's no way to get there, impenetrable. No one could get them, except the Romans said, we're gonna come and get you. And the first thing they did was they set up some garrisons. There's one, and then they built this wall around the entire mountain, about a 6-foot wall. And there's another garrison over here, but they had garrisons all the way along the wall, basically saying, you're never leaving. And then they started filling in the gorge on one side, filled it in with rock and debris. They kept doing this for months till they could build a causeway, and then they moved their weapons of war up there and broke through the walls. And when they got up top, all the Jews had killed themselves. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 that had hidden and escaped. Day 5, again, still in the desert. We went to En Gedi, where David was hiding from Saul. You can just see it, just so dry and barren. But as we walked, there were certain places where trees would be growing, and we kept following those, and we ended up finding this beautiful waterfall in the middle of this En Gedi desert. So we know that David would have gone there to refresh himself and rest. And here's Jennifer doing probably what David did, standing under there screaming like a girl. Then we went to Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Somewhere up in these hills, a couple shepherd boys threw a rock into a hole and heard clay pots crashing. And that's when they went down and discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they still just recently discovered a new lot of them. Then day 6 was a travel day to Galilee. A lot of driving, so not a lot of stopping. But here was where David fought Goliath. So Goliath and the Philistines would have come from that angle, and then David and the Israelites would have come from that hill, and they would have met, David and Goliath would have met in this valley in between the 2 hills. And there would have been a river that would have run through there where David would have picked up his stones. Day 7 went to the place called the Golden Heights, which is like the northern Masada. Again, another stronghold for the Jews against the Romans. And the Romans went at them with their weapons of war, blasted their walls. This was called the Bema Stone, and the Bema Stone was a place where traveling rabbis would stand to teach in a synagogue. And we know that Jesus traveled to all the synagogues around Galilee, so there's a very, very high likelihood that he stood right where I'm standing there to teach. That was pretty cool. Then we went to Caesarea Philippi. This was a place of idol worship, very dark, very bad things happen here. Roman temples and Greek temple and other temples. And this was called the Gates of Hell, of Hades, the Gates of Hell. Just an awful place, which is why Jennifer gave us the cool peace sign here. This is where Jesus asked his disciples, who do people say that I am? Day 8 was our Sabbath. It was a quiet day. We went to the Jordan River This was a place where a lot of people would come to get baptized. In fact, there's pictures of all these different people, famous people who came there to get baptized, saying this is where Jesus was baptized. So who knows who it was. My favorite part of the whole trip was being on the Sea of Galilee. So here we are out in the Sea of Galilee, just imagining Jesus walking along the shores over there, hot and dry, and doing it just because he loves us was, it really hit me. Here's us, looking so cute. We traveled in a family group with our team. This is our family. All right, then we went to the Sea of Galilee.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they'll be shown mercy.
And then we went to Capernaum. This is where Peter was from. This is also the place where the guys dug through the roof to let down the paralyzed man so that Jesus could heal him. That was here in Capernaum. And you can see this is a town nearby and a little bit more wealthy. And you can see the nice beams of the wealthy people's houses. Here we are again at the Jordan River, another part of the Jordan River. I didn't get baptized, but I did go under. Here I go. It's so refreshing. All right, this was a hot day, plus 43 degrees. We hiked up Mount Arbel, and Mount Arbel has these caves all along the side of it where the Jews would hide, again from the Romans. And Herod, you can see how high up it is. It's just, straight up cliff. So Herod, the way he got them was they'd have soldiers that would rappel down and throw smoke bombs into the caves, which would scare people out. And then they would hook them and throw them to their death. Really crazy. Then we went to these beautiful pools. It doesn't even look like Israel. I mean, this looks like Tahiti or Fiji or something like that, Hawaii. But it's just beautiful, and there's these natural pools. There was 5 of them. This is where they say Gideon came to, when he separated the men, when he got down to only 300 men. This is the pool they drank from. Then, of course, we had these little fish that would chew on your feet. I could only handle it for a very little bit. Jen was much better than me. Of course, I had bigger fish coming. It's too much. And then we went to this place called Susita, and it was so hot. But it's one of the largest ruins in Israel. Pretty cool view for a show. This is called Armageddon, or they say the last battle will happen. And there's this big stone altar to Baal, which children were offered and sacrificed on there. And then we came to Caesarea on the coast, and this massive place. If you look everywhere out in the water where it's dark, that's where Herod built foundations so he could build a massive home out on the water. He wanted a palace on the water. So he built this place. Really, really cool. More of the ruins that are around there. Big amphitheater. They had like the hippodrome. This is where they would race right here. They would race the chariots up and down this. And again, here we are in the Mediterranean. A lot of shells along the shore here. Wish we could have stayed here a lot longer than we did. We just sort of stopped for a little bit and kept going. Jen got herself some gelato, about the size of her head. Not bad. Well, then we went to Jerusalem. And we got there, we stayed at this hotel while we were there. And you can see the Dome of the Rock there on the right, and then the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is over there, the Black Dome. This is the Mount of Olives looking onto Jerusalem. Jerusalem was a busy city. We walked the Via Dolorosa. This is where Jesus carried his cross, up this narrow street. Who knows if it was covered in markets when he did that? He probably was. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where they say Jesus was crucified. And so you could go into this tomb or whatever, and this is what they would say is Golgotha, Skull Rock. Here's the Garden Tomb. This is another location where they say where Jesus' empty tomb was. It was much quieter than the first one. I like this one a lot better. We went and saw this full-scale model of Jerusalem that this couple spent like 50 years or something building. It's pretty spectacular. The second day I went to Jerusalem, went to the Wailing Wall. This was only the men could go on this side. Women went on another side. They all had to wear yarmulkes. Lots of guards everywhere carrying machine guns, and then you see these Jews with their fancy hats. Then we went down beneath the city, wandered beneath the city, the different tunnels. This was Hezekiah's tunnel, 1,400 feet through rock. It's pretty cool. Sometimes it was up to my chin, the roof, so you had to duck down. It was never any wider than this. I was all by myself. It's pretty cool. It emptied out on the Pool of Siloam. They accidentally found this by digging a sewer. The rocks the stones were just huge. You look at that stone, it's like 4 feet high by 20 feet long, and it's just massive. How they moved all this stuff is incredible. Of course, here's the bus where we spent most of our time. And then we finished Israel, we went to London, and England. We spent 3 days in England. This was our bed and breakfast. We woke up, had a long trip. I don't want to put that in this movie, but it was a long trip to get there. But we woke up the next morning early, and this is what greeted us out our window. There's our little place we stayed in up above the barn there, and these are just some pictures of around the grounds. Traveled to a market. Enjoyed the market the one day. Went for a walk in the woods. Went for a walk around the little town. Just looking at these buildings was really cool, and the old churches that were there. It's not a church. Lots of sheep. This is the roadway. Look at that. 2 cars could pass down that roadway. It's only like 8 feet wide. It's ridiculous. Then we went to the Cotswolds, and here's a bunch of shots from there. Slight rain. It's very lovely. Coffee and crumpets. Went into this old church. Very quiet and pretty area. Really loved it. Then we had high tea at this lovely inn, this lovely hotel. The very last thing we did, we wanted to get to Highclere Castle, but it was closed, so we could stand by the sign and take a picture of Jennifer by the sign, which was sad. We wanted to go in. That's it.